Right now, if you nick your finger opening a package, you probably wash it, dab on antiseptic, cover it with a tiny bandage, and continue your day while feeling personally betrayed by cardboard. That routine seems completely ordinary, but protecting broken skin is one of the oldest survival problems humans ever faced. It is older than writing, older than farming, older than permanent villages, and older than our species itself. In the Stone Age, a cut smaller than your thumbnail could begin a chain reaction that ended your life. So how did one tiny wound become so dangerous, and when did humans begin figuring out how to fight back? This is Oddiq, and if strange human history is your thing, consider subscribing. Now imagine the bandage is gone, the antiseptic is gone, the clinic is gone. You are bleeding in a world that has never heard the word germ. Understand the danger. We have to go back before humans, before stone tools, even before animals walked on land. Microbes had already occupied Earth for billions of years. They were in soil, water, rotting meat, animal mouths, thorns, and the grime beneath anything resembling a fingernail. Most were harmless, some were useful, but a few could turn warm, damaged tissue into an all-you-can-eat buffet. Your skin was the castle wall, tough, flexible, constantly repairing itself. A cut opened the gate. Once bacteria crossed that barrier, your immune system had to stop them before they multiplied, spread through tissue, entered the bloodstream, or triggered a body-wide inflammatory disaster. Today we call some of these outcomes cellulitis, sepsis, or tetanus. Stone Age people had no names for them. They only saw the pattern, first the cut, then heat and swelling, then pus, fever, confusion, weakness, and sometimes death. The enemy was invisible. That changed everything. Now place yourself roughly 100,000 years ago. You are moving through broken ground with no shoes designed by engineers, no metal knife, and no emergency room waiting behind the next hill. A snapped flake slices your palm. A thorn punctures your foot. A boar tooth tears your thigh. Even daily work is armed. Stone tools are sharp enough to butcher animals, which means they are sharp enough to butcher you. Hunting adds bites, horns, falls, and shattered bone. But here's the thing. The first danger is not always infection. It is blood loss. A deep cut can kill quickly if it opens a major vessel. Pressure might slow it. Packing the wound with material could help more. Except clean is doing heroic work in that sentence. Your hands carry dirt. The hide wrapped around you carries old blood. The water nearby may hold waste. The plant fiber pressed into the wound may stop bleeding while delivering bacteria straight inside. Your rescue can become the next threat. Archaeology rarely preserves a small infected cut. Skin disappears. Blood vanishes. A person can die from sepsis while leaving bones that appear perfectly normal thousands of years later. So researchers work like detectives arriving after almost every clue has been erased. They examine injuries that reached bone, signs of healing, unusual growth, tooth disease, amputations, and people who survived damage they could not possibly have managed alone. One famous case comes from Shanidar Cave in northern Iraq. There, archaeologist Ralph Solke's team uncovered the remains of several Neanderthals. Shanidar I, an adult male who lived tens of thousands of years ago, had endured major injuries. He had damage around one eye, a severely impaired arm, and physical problems that would have affected movement. Yet he survived for years. That does not prove someone disinfected his wounds. It proves something equally important. Someone kept him alive. Think about that. A badly injured hunter is not just a patient. He is slower travel, more food shared, and another body exposed to predators. Caring for him required repeated decisions. Bring water, offer food, protect the injury, help him move, keep him warm, watch through the night. Infection may begin with bacteria, but survival begins with other people. That is the first great Stone Age medicine, not a miracle herb, but attention. Someone noticed when swelling worsened. Someone learned that certain wounds smelled wrong. Someone remembered that the person whose cut was washed survived, while the person whose cut was packed with filthy fur did not. They did not need microscopes to recognize patterns. They needed memory, and a group willing to use it. The next clue is even more startling. In Liang Tebo Cave on Borneo, researchers discovered the remains of a person who lived around 31,000 years ago. The lower part of this person's left leg had been deliberately removed, probably during childhood, yet the patient survived for years afterward. Not minutes, not days, years. The bone showed organized healing rather than the chaotic destruction expected from an animal attack. Whoever performed that operation had to cut through tissue, avoid uncontrolled blood loss, and somehow keep the wound from becoming fatally infected in a tropical environment packed with microbes. Then the community had to support the patient through a long recovery. This was not somebody getting lucky after scraping a knee. This was surgery. Stone Age surgery. Here's what makes this so important. The story is no longer simply, ancient people were vulnerable because they lacked antibiotics. Of course they were vulnerable, but they were also experimenting with the foundations of medicine, observation, technique, aftercare, and shared knowledge. A tiny cut could kill you, yet a planned amputation could sometimes be survived. That sounds impossible until you realize that danger depends on more than wound size. Location matters, depth matters, blood supply matters. Contamination matters. The bacteria introduced matter. The patient's nutrition matters. The care afterward matters. A shallow scratch from a relatively clean edge might close without trouble. A deep puncture from a dirty thorn could seal at the surface, trap bacteria below, and become deadly. Small entrance, big problem. Plants offered another enormous, messy experiment. Leaves, bark, resin, moss, and chewed herbs could absorb blood, cover exposed tissue, reduce pain, or sometimes slow microbial growth. They could also poison the patient or contaminate the injury. Evidence is frustrating because plants decay, and finding pollen near a body does not automatically prove medicine. The famous pollen found around Shanidar Cave was once presented as possible evidence that flowers had been placed with the dead, although natural explanations have also been proposed, so we have to be careful. Stone Age healers were not walking pharmacies with perfect recipes. They were gamblers with generations of notes stored in stories and habits. Try this leaf. Avoid that sap. Wash before wrapping. Change the covering when it smells wrong. Successful choices remained in the group's memory. The failures were buried with the patient. Harsh peer review. But trial and error could slowly create real knowledge. If cool water removed dirt and reduced irritation, people remembered. If pressure stopped bleeding, they repeated it. If a certain resin helped a wound remain closed, it became valuable. No one needed to know the chemical reason. They only needed to observe the result. This is how much of human technology probably began. Not with one genius suddenly understanding the entire problem, but with hundreds of small discoveries accumulating across generations. One person survives. Someone asks why. A habit forms. Eventually, the habit outlives the person who discovered it. By the Neolithic, farming made the infection problem even stranger. Permanent settlements brought more people, more animals, more waste, and more opportunities for disease to circulate. Imagine a farmer cutting a foot with a stone sickle, then stepping into soil contaminated by animal dung. Dangerous bacteria could be carried deep into a puncture that looked almost harmless. Tetanus captures the nightmare perfectly. The wound may seem small. Days later, the muscles tighten. The jaw locks. Painful spasms arrive. By then, the original cut may appear irrelevant, yet it opened the door. Farming also meant repetitive labor, crop injuries, crowded shelters, and constant contact with livestock. Civilization did not simply make humans safer. At first, it built better neighborhoods for microbes too. And still, Stone Age communities attempted procedures that seem almost absurdly bold. Trepanation, the deliberate scraping or cutting of an opening in the skull, appears in prehistoric remains across multiple regions. The reasons probably varied. It may have been used for head trauma, pain, pressure, seizures, ritual beliefs, or combinations we cannot recover. What we can recover is healing. Some skulls show new bone growth around the opening, meaning the patient survived long enough for the body to begin repairing itself. Imagine the scene. A person is held still. A stone edge scrapes the skull again and again. There is no modern anesthesia, no stainless steel instrument, and definitely no nurse offering you a juice box afterward. Yet the operator must avoid cutting too deeply, manage the bleeding, and care for the exposed area afterward. One mistake means brain injury. One dirty tool means infection. Some patients survived anyway. That is not primitive stupidity. That is terrifying skill. Near the end of the Stone Age, Ötzi gives us something rare: preserved soft tissue. This man died in the Alps about 5,300 years ago and was naturally mummified in glacial ice. Researchers found an arrowhead lodged near his left shoulder, connected to a severe injury that likely caused major bleeding. But Ötzi also had a deep cut on his right hand that he had survived for at least several days. His body turns abstract danger into a person. You can picture the hand wrapped or held close, hurting with every movement. You can picture him climbing while already injured, carrying equipment and watching the ridges. Then another wound arrives. The arrow is dramatic, but the hand cut is familiar. It is the kind of injury you might dismiss today. For him, it could affect gripping, fighting, climbing, preparing food, and defending himself. A tiny cut did not always have to kill you directly. Sometimes it only had to make the next danger impossible to escape. That may be the answer to our central question. In the Stone Age, wounds were dangerous not because every scratch was a death sentence. Most small cuts probably healed. The danger came from uncertainty. You could not see contamination. You could not identify the organism. You could not know whether swelling meant normal healing or the beginning of the end. There were no antibiotics to rescue a failed first response, no tetanus vaccine, no sterile stitches, no intravenous fluids, and no laboratory tests. Your survival depended on where the cut landed, what entered it, how strong you were, what your community knew, and whether somebody stayed beside you. It was biology mixed with chance. So here's the full picture. First, ancient microbes waited beyond the protective barrier of skin. Then sharp tools, hunting, and hard landscapes opened countless gates. Neanderthal communities showed that long-term care could keep severely injured people alive. On Borneo, a skilled group carried out an amputation around 31,000 years ago and guided the patient through recovery. Plants, washing, pressure, and wrapping became experiments repeated across generations. Farming crowded humans beside animals and waste, raising the stakes. Trepanation proved that prehistoric healers sometimes challenged wounds directly, and Ötzi carried both an ordinary hand injury and a lethal battlefield wound into the ice. Now return to your finger. You wash the cut, cover it, and forget it. That tiny modern habit contains billions of years of microbial warfare and thousands of generations of human observation. The bandage is new. The instinct behind it is ancient. Somewhere in deep time, someone looked at another person's wound and decided not to walk away. They cleaned it. They covered it. They waited. And sometimes, against invisible enemies they could not name, it worked. Being human was never just about surviving your own injuries. It was about becoming the reason someone else survived theirs. If you enjoyed that journey, you can quietly join Oddiq for the next strange chapter of human history.